I'd love you to take some time to tell us about James, tell us about you, and before we jump into the discussion.
Yeah, so I'm a design ops loving ex snowboard bum living in Ottawa, Canada. I've spent years working in design and design ops at various. Well, I started in advertising marketing, moved over to product, and recently joined Microsoft in the last year. So that's me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, cool. So I'd like to start off probably with a very generic question, but probably quite important.
Okay.
What's your, maybe not like who you work for, but what's your philosophy on AI?
Yeah. I'm glad you made that caveat, because I should also mention there's like some Microsoft legal ease here, that I'm here representing myself. What I say are my own opinions and don't necessarily reflect those of Microsoft. So we'll get that out of the way. You're welcome, legal team. So yeah, philosophy on AI. Okay. So it's not going away. Like this is not like a trend. AI is here. It's kind of fundamentally changing how we work. So my philosophy is learn as much as you can. I'm like just absorb everything. And so with that, the way that I kind of see it is that this is really like AI is really just a tool. It reminds me of I'm dating myself here, but like we used to use Dreamweaver to design, and then Dreamweaver kind of fizzled out and people started using Photoshop, and then Photoshop fizzled out because Sketch came out, and that was like mind blowing. But we've gone through all these tooling changes throughout the years. And I just see AI as being the next tool that designers use in their tool chest. And I think that that's important to recognize, that this isn't like AI is not a designer replacement. I like how Microsoft, I mean, I'm kind of pumping Microsoft here. They call it a co-pilot, and that because the AI is not the pilot, it's like extending our cognitive and capabilities. It's, helping us augment our capabilities as designers to really try to extend and increase our impact. And so my philosophy is that it's just a tool. So I just treat it like any other tool. I do the research, I understand what its capabilities are, I play with it, I try new ones, I explore, and I just try to figure out how I can extend my capabilities, make myself more efficient. One of the things that I kind of equated to is a bit like any of these other tools, that it's like a Mario superpower. It's like the fire flower, right? It's like I'm still Mario, but like it's a superstar. It's a fire flower. It just gives me some new powers. So yeah.
I mean, I love all of your references. I don't know if they date me as well, but Dreamweaver and my brain jumped straight to like Super Mario Brothers on the SNES there with the feather that comes down.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Yeah. But like, so quite like maybe like a little bit more in the weeds. Like, how is it kind of like, maybe we could start with you and then onto like you're just an extension of your team. But is there any kind of like tangible ways that this tooling change or platform change, or we don't really know what we're in the middle of right now, but the current changes, has it changed like concrete things in the ways that you guys work or work together, or the work that you can output?
Yeah. And it does. And in two ways. For myself as a design ops practitioner, there's the change that it's having in that work. I use AI almost every day. I try to think about how AI can help improve every task that I'm working on. One of the most common use cases that I have is I use it for rubber ducking, and that term comes from engineering. And it's the idea that like if you can just bounce ideas off of someone or something out loud, or writing with with an AI that it's really good to validate your thoughts, to get your brain going, help to get yourself outside of your normal line of thought. And AI is like perfect for that. But like in my normal day to day, just like last week, I used AI to generate some beautiful imagery for a stakeholder presentation. I haven't designed in over 10 years, so I'm a little rough around the edges, but imagery is a huge part of storytelling. And so as design ops practitioners, we do a lot of storytelling. We try to convince stakeholders to embrace new proposals for change. We try to get our design team to embrace change, and storytelling is a big part of that. So AI helps a lot with crafting those stories, to generate the assets for those stories, to develop communication strategies and all that stuff. So that's helpful for me day to day. But in the product design work, like this is what really excites me. I start really nerding out. You're gonna see me get all excited and my eyes will light up. But for product design, it's like we have these two kind of buckets of impact that we're starting to see take shape. One is the short term, and the other is like long term. And I think a lot of the stories around AI right now are about like, oh, long term, what is this going to enable? But and I'll touch on that in a second. But today, short term, there's actually a lot of really cool things being done by product designers on product teams in the tools that are available today. And there are some really great tools, and I'll share some links to some tools and learnings in a little bit as I talk about them. But just thinking about what product designers can do today, for one, thinking specifically about people that work on design systems, is that the AI is proven quite valuable immediately. I know folks across different companies and different teams that are using AI to generate code components and the AI is trained specifically on their design system specification and on their tech stack. So when in their code, when they use certain terminology, like when they're drafting component variants, and they use a specific term to describe a variant, they say variant dash info, variant dash alert, or something like that, or variant equals. You can train an AI on that spec, and then you can have AI develop code components using your specification, so it can speed up that. We've also seen AIs generate the unit tests for design system components, which is really fantastic because like unit tests are such a cumbersome task, and it's like not like rocket science to generate unit tests. And so you can kind of just train an AI to like open and close an accordion and see if it did that, and that's a pretty easy thing. There's also some really interesting exploration being done where you can train an AI on your content guidelines, your voice and tone, and then you can work that into the code components to make sure that you use the right terminology when you're generating buttons and things like that, depending on your action verbs or whatever your guidelines support. So that's very easily trainable material. And there's some cool stuff that is being done around design system support services, what I would consider support services, things like design system communications and updates and newsletters and things that can just automatically generate these communication artifacts. As well, I've seen custom chat GPTs be trained on design system documentation and then provide design system support in Slack channels. I like having it worked at Shopify and quite closely with the players team. A lot of the support that we were questions and things that we were getting asked in our design system channel was support related, and we just needed to provide. We were doing a lot of connections and providing the links to documentation, and the AI is really good at that. It can pick up on the questions that's being asked and provide a link to the documentation or embed that knowledge right in the Slack channel, pulled right from the documentation. That can happen today.
That's so cool, man. Because I guess like if you could just take one step back from that, is in like, why does a design system it exists? And it's because companies have very, very complicated products now that you have to have a big repository of information around. You have to be able to communicate between teams. And that doesn't in any way supersede like the genius people that put together the initial systems that actually have to really go through all of that, that workflow, that process, but when they get to that point where it's, yeah, they just need like 80% of it is set and they want to go in to do the, the finessing. That's such an amazing use case that, like, I guess, maybe a lot of our audience probably wouldn't think of design specifically in that way sometimes. So that's a really awesome, like, kind of extrapolation about like what a large language model is good for and what a design system can do.
And I love how you pointed out that element of the genius of the good design, right? And the design system is helping to democratize that genius, right? It's helping to raise the floor of the entire product. Interesting is like AI is also doing that same job. Like that's the fundamentals, that it's raising the floor and it's democratizing the access to that great information. And so if you think about as we build our rationale and everything around design systems, like we're extracting that genius out of the designers that, did all the work to think about those components. And then if we can share that knowledge and get it out, and I think we'll talk about this in a little bit, the importance of knowledge management and documentation stuff, it becomes such an integral part of being able to democratize that. So it's quite exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. There's one question here, which I'm going to tie back to a question that I've got as well. So in terms of like setting teams up for success and knowledge sharing and how to be successful, there's also one question from the audience from Michael Ebner about the amount of tools being released all the time and how to decide when to take the time to learn them.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like part and parcel of setting a team up for success, is in like, how do you make those decisions? How do you give that space for people to learn these things? And how then do you, talk about like, the systems and the knowledge sharing that comes from, a large design team? These feel very interlinked to me. So have you got any thoughts on those?
Yeah, totally. So I'm gonna talk about, because just to unpack that, there's kind of the question about consuming information and learning, and then there's the part. Sorry, Phil. It's about the application of the tools, or like
you've got to make decisions on where to learn, and then you've got to make the decisions on how to share that knowledge. These are like two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. So, okay. First of all, when it comes to consuming information, there is so much out there. Like every day, there's some kind of new innovation, new breakthrough, a new tool. It's such a hot thing right now that it's almost impossible to stay completely up to date. So I actually rely on others to do that for me because I'm working a day job. I'm in like 9 to 5, right? I have work to ship at Microsoft, so I can't spend all day reading the news. So a couple places that I depend on, people that I depend on. One is Mia Bloom's Substack, Designing with AI. Mia's amazing. She's an amazing design leader, amazing design coach, and she's really leaning hard and trying to extract the learnings from AI and how it will apply to product design. So her Designing with AI Substack is amazing. The Design Better podcast is leading into more and more AI coverage. In fact, they just had a great event yesterday, an AMA with Brad Frost, where he specifically talked about AI and design systems, and it was fantastic. If you can, watch the recording. And they've got some new content coming down the pipeline. The AI Valley newsletter is also super helpful. It's not necessarily focused specifically on product design or design in general, but you can get your daily brief of all things AI. Hacker News, sometimes I poke around Hacker News and try to stay up to date, although that community is a little wild sometimes. So yeah, it's take that. But the idea is, like, I kind of lean on those individuals because there's kind of two categories here. It's like you have tooling that's like very early adopter, introductory. It's like proof of concept quite stuff that, there's an idea out there about how it can affect our workflows and our lives, but it's not quite realized yet. It hasn't hit that level of maturity that maybe is applicable in day-to-day use. And then there are tools that are like today, like you can use day to day. Like on a daily basis, I'm playing around in Microsoft Copilot. I'm using Midjourney. I'm in ChatGPT, playing around in FigJam AI, which is amazing for synthesizing data in FigJam, like using it for, I use it at every single opportunity to help with affinity mapping. And so those types of tools. But then you have other tools that are like kind of on that exploratory early adopter, like you're almost there kind of phase, like Galileo AI, right? That's the like user interface generation tool. Like, I don't think it's at a point to use today. And so I don't pay attention to it daily, but I let these people tell me when it's time to pay attention to it. And then that's the trigger. That's the tripwire for me to, okay, I'm going to play around with this a bit more. So
that's a really good kind of tip for like filtering the information, and you're using a human filter. And that's such good. That's such, because I struggle with it as well. I'm sure like why it's one of the most upvoted questions from the audience at the moment is it's really challenging because there is just this complete overload of information. I can also attest to Galileo. And agree that it's in this space which I really enjoy using it, but I don't know what I'm using it for. I'm just like, I just like to make these things on it, and then it doesn't really go anywhere. So
but it's like that tool, I think, has that area of AI problem solving is actually where I think that's the future category that I was talking about earlier that we didn't get a chance to touch on, because I think the real potential for product design in the future is going to be related to the generation of visuals or the generation of prototypes. And the idea that, Galileo, you can't really do it right now, but the idea that if you could train your design system, for example, in Figma, like I wouldn't be surprised if Figma's got something up their sleeve, and this summer is like going to be an exciting one for Figma. But if you could train your AI in Figma and ask it to prompt a couple different variations of a sign-up flow based on certain criteria or user needs, and just have that, be an automated process that would normally take product designers a couple days to explore, maybe a couple weeks, and that's an incredible time saver. Like, you could generate in a couple hours a whole bunch of different options. You could then get those to a research team to do some testing around, and you could shorten that exploration time span down, the time it takes to develop those explorations, like in an insane amount of time, which is like really exciting, because what does that mean for product designers? Like if we don't have to do that mundane task of like moving those design system components around the canvas in Figma, it's like we can just have our assistant do that, right? Our Copilot do that for us. What does that mean for product designers? And to like me, that means that we get to do the exact thing we've been asking for years, if not decades, which is move up exactly the product development lifecycle to be more strategic. We get to spend that time being a better partner with our cross-functional partners, to be more involved in the early strategy, the early idea generation, the early understanding of what are the business needs, what are the user needs, and move way up the ladder, which really should empower us. Like, to me, I look at that and I go, God damn, like I wish I had that when I was early in my design career, because instead I was just deep in, at the time, Photoshop and Sketch, just like trying to do mocks and just like pushing out pixels. And the time that I could spend in that early upfront strategic time frame was compressed. I couldn't do it. And so that's where I really get excited, because like I think about that potential. It's something we've been asking for decades. And I'm like, please, this is the moment. We'll face some challenges, because like anything, it's like when you shorten a time frame, do you get that time back? It's like, well, it's like maybe we should just move on to a new feature. Everybody's excited, but it's like we have to be protective about that opportunity. And if we want to push ourselves, to push our discipline, we need to be protective of this opportunity to be able to enable that for us. So,
and do you see that? So you like obviously like orchestrating a huge team, and there's a lot of ins and outs of that. Do you see that kind of adoption and thinking going on like throughout the levels? Is there any kind of correlation between people that are really like kind of eagerly adopting it, or is this not a challenge like within the business that you work in because of the nature of the business, but like do you see like junior designers or midweights like going, yes, that's kind of aligning to that train of thought of I will adopt these kinds of tools because it can really help me in these ways? Or do you see any challenges or friction there, like between personalities?
So I think we'll always face the challenges of personalities. We'll always have the friction of multidisciplinary product development. I think that friction is actually healthy to the product development lifecycle. As far as the future state we were just talking about, I think it's still quite early to think about, how that time would be used, or what those efficiencies would actually gain on product teams, because I think it's kind of unproven right now. But what I can say is that today I have seen product designers use AI to improve early sketches and conceptual explorations. So Google design sprint methodology describes, the crazy 8 exercise, where, you just really sketch out quick explorations of an interface or an interaction that a user might have with a product or service. And what's really what's interesting that I've seen is that product designers have taken those crazy 8s and just added a layer of fidelity in those visuals that help them communicate their explorations more effectively. And so what I've seen is that from a perspective of efficiency is like that ability to increase the fidelity and rely less on really scrappy sketches has improved the timeline or the amount of work required to gain buy-in to conceptual ideas. So again, it helps with that storytelling element. And in some of the examples that I've seen is that time has been beneficial. It hasn't been like lost time. It didn't mean that they shipped the product even quicker or lost the ability to refine it. That they shortened that time to get buy-in, which gave them more time on the back end to refine. So the expectation for how long it took to ship hadn't changed. It just sped them up, and so that's a win, right, for us. So
as I totally agree, and I would say then the other kind of thing that we could chat about are like silos within businesses can be a bit of a blocker to integration as well. And so like the knowledge sharing amongst teams, or like you kind of touched on it with like design systems into Slack and like how that can pick up and support tickets in an easier way. But is there any other kind of tips or tricks you can share, like trying to break down those barriers, like maybe even between like design and dev, or different stakeholders within it with knowledge management? Is anything that you can kind of speak to in that area?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of 2 elements to the knowledge management thing here. Is that there's the knowledge management in which we have to train these AIs in the LLM, and how important it is to capture what it is that makes our products special, what it is that makes our designers special, all that rationale that defines like what is our product and why is this design great and what defines it. That knowledge all needs to be captured to be able to train these AIs to be able to do some of that work that we were talking about. And so as a first step today is like we need to start leaning into that documentation. A lot of design systems are starting to add the space for rationale as to why this component is the way that it is, and the rules that govern its usage as part of the larger design system. And so today we should start leaning into being more considerate and adding robustness around that practice, because we're going to get to that future state fairly quickly. But then the other element to knowledge management is actually the idea that like we sharing what we're learning about these AI tools and how they affect our process with our cross-functional partners. And so there's this element of knowledge sharing and learning that's really important. And so I tell a lot of teams right now to really start opening up and being transparent about this exploration into your AI tools, because you want to invite your multidisciplinary partners. You want them to understand how these new tools are affecting your process, because we then have to advocate for the time saved. And we can't do that unless there's transparency about our process. Because if they just see this end result of like, oh my God, you did your work a week quicker, well, I'm going to use you for something else now. Like that's what's going to happen. And so I've only found great benefits from opening up and being transparent about our processes. So inviting our cross-functional partners to engage in this process with us, to understand the product design process and how AI tools are making it better, to show them the value and try to prove out the value of that new time that we're getting, the fact that we can refine, we can get more data informed decisions, we can do more explorations. And the only way that we do that is when we bring those people along with us. Nothing good happens when we operate in a black box. So open it up, bring your partners along with you, document your stuff so everybody can learn from it. And I think we'll be in a better place.
Oh, dude, that is awesome advice. I'm going to switch tack to an audience question because we're running low on time. This is absolutely flown by. We have a couple minutes left. So this is a bit more of a tactical one. Do you have any best practices from your understanding and your explorations of like structuring prompts? Because prompts are really things that you have to use if you're going to be interacting with most AIs. Is there anything that you reliably do that you find useful that you keep coming back to?
Yeah, I mean, nothing super specific. All that stuff that you see on LinkedIn about like being more specific with your prompt and like trying to tell the AI who it is that they are, what you need them to do, rather than just giving one sentence, is always super helpful. But as far as a best practice is concerned, I think my biggest piece of advice is like, don't rely on the output. Like, we're not at a state there. You still need human oversight. You need to read everything that it outputs. You have to double check and verify, just like you would any other teammate that you're working with. Like, you want to bounce ideas. You want to play with them. You want to, document stuff and work and iterate. And so like, treat it like that. Is that, AI will always need the human factor in it. And that's our responsibility, right? We get into a dangerous place when we start really releasing full control and putting it on these tools. And I think that puts us in a dangerous spot. So bring the humanity to your effort with these tools.
Oh, dude, that was awesome. And I really, that's such a good final note on it as well. And I'm actually really sorry because I could listen to you all day and speak to you all day on these things, but we are coming to a close. Yeah, man. Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate your time, and I hope our audience does as well.
I hope you enjoyed that session from our virtual event, The Infinite Canvas, exploring AI's creative potential. There's plenty more to learn, so be sure to check out the rest of the sessions. Otherwise, head over to superside.com for more on AI and its impact on marketing and creative. Thanks for watching.